Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni Viewer and welcome to another list video. I'm often asked by people what my favorite Godzilla movie is, and my honest answer would be, it depends on the mood I'm in. You see, I kind of consider my favorite Godzilla movie to be whatever I want to watch at the time, and quality isn't always a factor in that decision.
I know that Mothra vs. Godzilla is a good movie, and Godzilla vs. Megalon is a bad movie. However, Godzilla vs. Megalon is loads of fun in its awfulness, so if I want to watch something fun, I'll pick that over the more serious condemnation of human greed that is Mothra vs. Godzilla. If, on the other hand, I decide I'd rather see a movie that actually means something, the inverse is true.
So I can't tell you which Godzilla movies are my favorites. But I can tell you which ones I think are the best. In fact, why limit myself to just Godzilla?
For today's list, pretty much everything with giant monsters, kaiju, or dinosaurs in it is applicable, regardless of whether they are from Japan, America, or somewhere else entirely.
In order to be considered the best, these movies have to do everything exceptionally well, making them as close to flawless as they can get. From the special effects to the acting, from the music to the cinematography, these movies have to excel in every regard.
Naturally, some of this is still influenced by my own preferences of what I personally look for in a monster movie, so don't get the idea that I'm making a 100% objective list here, though I think most of you will still agree with my choices.
Just one caveat before we begin, neither the original King Kong nor the original Godzilla are on this list, but I have a good reason for excluding them.
You see, these two movies truly are the best of the genre, to the point where they almost transcend it, so naturally they would share the number one slot if included, making this list predictable. I don't want to be predictable. I want to surprise you. So keep in mind that even though neither of these films are in the number one slot, they are still ultimately the best.
Are we all on the same page? Then let's count down the top 16 best kaiju and giant monster movies ever made.
Number 16.
I am somewhat peeved that there is a Stephenie Meyer book-turned-movie called The Host, because now I have to always specify that I'm not referring to that thing whenever I recommend the South Korean monster movie also called The Host.
Best described as a movie about a kidnapping with a monster as the kidnapper, The Host, or Gwoemul on its home turf, is South Korea's equivalent to Godzilla in terms of thematics. On the one hand, it is a scathing political commentary inspired by real-life events, in this case the dumping of chemicals into the Han River. On the other hand, it is a moving drama about a dysfunctional family learning to come together to rescue the youngest of their clan. Throw in an international conspiracy, a few bits of light comedy, and one of the nastiest monsters to ever grace the screen, and you have a film that every monster movie fan needs to see. Trust me, if you haven't seen The Host yet, track down a copy right now. You'll be glad you did. Number 15.
Maybe it's the nostalgia in me, but after the review I did, I feel like I have to include Godzilla 2000.
I won't dwell on it for too long since I already said my piece in another video, but here's the gist. Godzilla 2000 is an average quality Godzilla movie, but by reveling in its averageness, it winds up embodying everything you could possibly want from the series. It's simple without being stupid, has just the right balance of camp and pathos, and gives Godzilla plenty of opportunities to shine. I recommend you go watch the original review for my full thoughts if you haven't already. It's weird and paradoxical to call something average an example of the best, and yet if any movie can be described that way, Godzilla 2000 would be it. Number 14. Special attention must be given to the fastest flyer of them all, Rodan. Not only does this have the distinction of being Toho's first color kaiju film, but Rodan is also the film which showed that Kaiju Eiga was here to stay. Rather than being just a retread of Godzilla, it has its own identity distinct from that film. Nowhere is this better exemplified than the scene where the Rodans hatch, which plays out like something right out of the Cthulhu mythos.
Now, here's where some people may disagree with me. I actually think the American recut of Rodan is superior to the original Japanese cut. Just hear me out on this.
See, in the original version, the second Rodan literally comes out of nowhere. It seems like there's only one for most of the film, then suddenly another shows up during the Fukuoka attack without any kind of build-up. The American cut, meanwhile, uses a few editing tricks to make it clear that there are two Rodans from the outset, and that they are always together. Thanks to this, the audience comes to view them as faithful mates, and that gives the finale in which they choose to die together more of a tragic punch. Regardless of which version you prefer, though, Rodan is still one of the all-time best kaiju movies, and more than worthy of a spot on this list. Number 13.
Do you want to prove to a film snob that kaiju have personalities beyond just saying roar and smashing stuff? Show them War of the Gargantuas.
Many are the people who count this film as one of their favorites, and it all comes down to the characterization of the Gargantuas themselves, Sanda and Gaira. Their relationship is a riff of sorts on the tale of Cain and Abel. Sanda is gentle and kind, but Gaira is violent and angry. Amazingly, it seems as though neither of them actually want to fight each other, yet because they are polar opposites, they must. And there's a certain tragedy about that. Throw in the fact that Gaira is one of the scariest kaiju ever who scarred many a child when they saw him actually eating people at the start of the film, and it's no wonder this movie stands out from the crowd. Number 12.
I would like to take a moment to remind everyone that even though Marion C. Cooper's original King Kong is not on this list, it would have shared the number 1 slot with Godzilla if it were. That being said, this slot goes to the Peter Jackson remake.
Let's be honest, folks. Remaking a classic is an uphill battle, but Peter Jackson's King Kong serves as a good example of how to do it right. Rather than just being a shot-for-shot copy with no originality, or being so incredibly different that it's unrecognizable, this remake strikes a balance between new and familiar. It stays true to the spirit and ideas of the original while putting its own spin on things. Skull Island is a fully realized, multi-dimensional world that feels like a place you could explore for months on end. Characters are reinvented in ways that feel natural when compared to the original. Even scenes and lines that are taken directly from the first film are given their own spin to set them apart without disrespecting the intent.
Does it surpass the original? Of course not. But it doesn't fall far from it either.
Say what you want about it being too long or too over the top, but I say that as remakes of King Kong go, you couldn't ask for a better one. Number 11.
It's hard to believe that at the same time Daiei Studios was producing those painfully bad original Gamera movies, it also produced a masterpiece in the form of Daimajin.
For most of the runtime, as in literally all but the last 12 minutes of it, Daimajin isn't really a kaiju movie. It's a samurai movie, following the usual plot of an evil clan slaughtering a benevolent family, requiring the children to take revenge. The main difference from other such films is that the family in this flick worships Majin, the god of vengeance, and they constantly refer to him as though he is a real being who will eventually come for the bad guy.
The majority of the movie, despite a lack of kaiju action, is still thrilling and emotional in its own right, to the point where if it had just been a straightforward samurai film, I don't think many people would have complained.
But then Majin wakes up at the end and delivers one of the best kaiju rampages ever put to film. I honestly can't do it justice here. It's unconventional for the genre, but Daimajin still stands out as exceptional. Number 10.
If I am not going to include the original Godzilla on this list, then I must include the Return of Godzilla.
A part of me is worried that this movie may have been overlooked by an entire generation of fans because it took so freaking long to show up on DVD. But now that it's finally out in its original form, everyone who might have missed it can finally see it for what it is. The most apocalyptic Godzilla movie ever made.
I mean that too. The Return of Godzilla was one of several movies to be produced in 1980s era Japan that dreaded the outcome of the Cold War, and that dread resulted in Godzilla being reinterpreted as the beast of the apocalypse, especially when it comes to the visuals.
Consider how Godzilla enters and exits the film. At the beginning, he rises from a volcano rather than the ocean. Volcanoes, of course, are viewed in many mythologies as passageways to hell. At the finale, he is cast back into hell, but with the sense that he will inevitably be back. Even his temporary defeat midway through his rampage is ended by a literal rain of fire from the heavens when the Russian bomb is detonated. Then, of course, there's the genuinely intense political plot throughout the first half of the film, in which the Japanese government must decide where it stands when the world's two greatest superpowers are breathing down its neck. This is accompanied by the more personal stories of the people fleeing or searching for a way to stop Godzilla without starting World War III. All of that, of course, is underscored by some of the best Godzilla music not composed by Akira Ifukube, which is quite a feat in its own right.
Basically, and I swear I am not saying this to tick people off, what fans say they saw in Shin Godzilla, I see in the Return of Godzilla.
When it comes to socio-political relevance combined with intense kaiju action and personal drama, this movie is hard to beat. Number 9.
What's better than a movie with 1, 2, 3, or even 4 monsters? How about a movie with a whole bunch of them? In that case, we must pay respect to Destroy All Monsters.
This is one of the biggest kaiju movies of all time, both in scope and in ambition, and the sheer epic nature of the proceedings are still thrilling even today.
I'm sure some of you are wondering why I chose Destroy All Monsters over Godzilla Final Wars, which, by the way, is not on the list. Well, it all comes down to focus.
Final Wars has more monsters, but it doesn't seem to know what to do with them. Most of the kaiju don't even get 3 total minutes of screen time before they are pushed to the side so we can follow the not X-Men as they rip off the Matrix. In Destroy All Monsters, a proper balance is struck between fleshing out the human plot and giving the kaiju their dues.
Well, except for Baragon and Varan. But when it comes to the amount of monsters who don't get their due on screen, I think 2 out of 9 is much better than 10 out of 15.
Even knowing that it didn't turn out to be the last of the Showa series as originally planned, it still serves as a fitting conclusion, and the amount of effort put into it is evident from start to finish. As far as I'm concerned, Destroy All Monsters is the best large-scale monster mash to date. Number 8.
You know, I never said all the movies on this list had to be live action. So I'm also going to include the animated film, Negadon the Monster from Mars.
This short animated feature was the subject of the second review I ever made, and if you want to hear my full thoughts, follow the links. The main point, though, is that Negadon is a movie made by a kaiju fan for other kaiju fans, but in a way that isn't alienating to non-fans. If you are familiar with the kaiju genre, there are tons of little Easter eggs and sly details hidden throughout, but none of those distract from the main point of the short, which is to see a giant robot with a drill fighting a strange floating pyramid monster.
It's just long enough to deliver everything you could possibly want, and even manages to be inspiring in its own way.
Just as I said with the host, if you haven't seen Negadon yet, go find a copy. Trust me, you won't regret it. Number 7.
I am about to cheat and include 2 movies in this slot because I think they are both of equal importance. Give it up for both Jason and the Argonauts and The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad.
When it comes to classic high fantasy, these movies are hard to beat, and a big part of that is owed to Ray Harryhausen's monsters. These beasts are really impressive, each one imbued with such personality that it's small wonder they wound up overshadowing the human actors, who, to be fair, still give great performances. To this day, the popular images of Talos, the Hydra, and the Cyclops are directly influenced by these films.
Besides the iconic status of the monsters, they're just good fantasy movies, delivering on just about every level you could ask for.
For the sake of transparency, I think Jason has the better story and Sinbad has the better monsters, but they're so close in every other way that I just couldn't decide between them. Besides, it's my list and I'll do what I want. Number 6.
Critics often accuse kaiju movies of all being the same. Godzilla vs. Biollante is different.
This may be the most ambitious movie of the entire Heisei series on pretty much every level. From a complex human plot filled with international intrigue to pretty much everything about Biollante, this film aims high and almost improbably hits the target with pinpoint accuracy. The Return of Godzilla was a tough act to follow, but this movie pulled it off. Also, I love that this guy got a cameo.
I had to look it up, but that guy is Daimon Kaka, the frontman for the Japanese metal band Seikimatu, and a huge Godzilla fan. He actually won the Godzilla Roar contest for the Return of Godzilla. I've listened to the band, they're actually pretty good.
Anyway, Godzilla vs. Biollante went sadly unappreciated in its time, which led to this, but some people are starting to recognize it for the masterpiece it is, and I am pleased with that. Number 5.
Citizen Kane follows a controversial man from his birth to his death, allowing us, the audience, to watch as his life unravels until his demise, before which he yearns for a childhood which he never had. The giant monster equivalent of this would be 20 million miles to Earth.
Yes, I just made that comparison, and maybe it's a bit exaggerated, but there is still truth in it. The alternate title for this film would have to be The Tragedy of the Emir, because that's exactly what it is. We follow the monster, the Emir, from its birth to its death, and our sympathies lie with it the whole time. This is a creature who did nothing wrong, but was born into a world in which he had no place. It was treated with violence, so violence was all it knew, and that violence escalated until the Emir met the fate of all who live in violence. One has to wonder at the end if it really needed to be killed, and what it says about mankind that killing it was the only option pursued.
At least, that's what I got from the movie. I don't know if anyone else has ever read that deeply into it.
Okay, so your mileage may vary when it comes to how Shakespearean it is, but 20 million miles to Earth still remains a shining example of what giant monsters can be. Number 4.
If you want proof that Godzilla fans do not oppose reinterpretations on principle, then you need look no further than the warm reception they gave Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, or GMK for short.
This movie was a gigantic departure from the established canon. Godzilla was the supernatural container of souls killed in the Second World War. Mothra and Baragon were folklore entities. King Ghidorah was a good guy, for crying out loud. A good guy! That's like making the Joker a good guy!
And yet it works. For as wildly different as it is, it just works. And it also serves a purpose.
The second part of my Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah review was devoted to exploring its disturbing socio-political outlook, which reinforced a revisionist version of World War II.
There has been a push within Japanese society to get the nation to acknowledge this ugly part of its history, and GMK was part of that push.
In the film, Godzilla is a vessel for the souls of everyone tortured and killed by the Japanese army during the war, and they compel Godzilla to attack not just for revenge, but because Japan has chosen to forget what it did. A major theme about respecting the past pervades the film, but it doesn't necessarily hit you over the head with it, meaning it will inspire you to think rather than force you to think. How effective it was, who can say? But message or no message, GMK is still one heck of a ride from start to finish. Number 3.
There's just no other way to say it. I love Pacific Rim. And why on earth shouldn't I?
Pacific Rim is an amazing film, working as both an homage to the classics of the genre and as a standalone example of it.
It takes all of the best elements from Godzilla, Ultraman, Evangelion, and the like, and mixes it all together into one delicious casserole. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like a watered-down distillation or cheap ripoff of those series. And it doesn't feel like you have to have seen any of those past series in order to get it.
In a way, this movie is like a bridge between the superhero genre and the kaiju genre, and thus has something for everyone. Even the soundtrack is a great fusion of orchestral symphony and hard rock that I can listen to for hours. There's just no denying it. Pacific Rim is a kaiju movie for the ages. Number 2.
Dinosaurs are a staple of the kaiju genre. In fact, some of the most iconic kaiju ever either are or have been based on dinosaurs. So therefore, I must include the best dinosaur movie of them all, Jurassic Park.
This one is pretty self-explanatory, right? I mean, it's Jurassic Park. What can I say about it that hasn't already been said by thousands of others? This movie wasn't just great, it was revolutionary, ushering in a new era for both special effects and the portrayal of dinosaurs in popular culture. It has an excellent cast comprised not of superstars, but of character actors who fit their roles perfectly. It has one of the best scores ever recorded, and a sense of wonder that's sorely lacking in other movies of this genre. Do I even need to say anything else? You already know Jurassic Park is amazing, and it deserves to be counted among the best. Number 1.
Remember folks, the only reason the original Godzilla and King Kong are not on this list is because they transcend everything to the point where they would automatically be number 1, since they are in fact the best. And that would have made the list predictable. So you have to remember that they are ultimately the best of the genre. So, aside from them, what could possibly surpass everything else? I say the title goes to Gamera 2, The Advent of Legion, or Attack of Legion as it's sometimes called.
That's right, everyone, a Gamera movie. Specifically, the second entry of the Heisei trilogy. With regards to those two exceptions, this one surpasses them all. These movies set out to reinvent the poor man's Godzilla from a sad imitation to a proper icon, and Attack of Legion is the pinnacle of the turtles' greatness.
What about this movie works? Heck, what doesn't?
The imagery is amazing, the symbolism is perfectly executed, the music is epic, the humor to alleviate the tension is appropriately used, the drama is intense, the characterization for both the humans and the kaiju is flawless. This isn't just the best Gamera movie, or even the best kaiju movie, but one of the best overall films I've ever seen. I kid you not, I would place it right up there with Casablanca. If you haven't seen Gamera 2, Advent, or Attack of Legion, you need to seek it out immediately.
And that's my list. Those are the 16 best movies I think the kaiju genre has to offer. But that's not to say the rest are without merit. Like I said, sometimes there's a lot of fun to be had in watching a bad movie. However, bad needs a standard of good to be measured against, and those are the 16 movies which are my pillars of quality. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I hope you at least found my choices interesting. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer, signing off. Since you guys spent so much time listening to me talk about what I think is the best, I think it's only fair that I open the floor to you as well. Feel free to leave in the comments which movies you think are the best of the kaiju genre.